This man really obeyed. The childhood sweetheart who has had a crush since childhood likes his brother. Senior sister Hisai, whom he adores in his heart, still likes his brother. And the only thing that likes him is an ugly glasses girl. Before learning the truth, the male protagonist has always thought that childhood sweetheart Hinata-kue also likes himself. After all, even if she goes to school together, she has to stick to the male protagonist. The two just arrived at school. The male protagonist's brother Xiaosang walked towards him. His handsome face and outstanding athletic talent make him very popular with girls. The male protagonist at this time is also proud to have such a brother. Suddenly, outside the door, a very brightly dressed girl walked in, and she came to find the male protagonist. It turns out that this charming girl is the male protagonist's senior sister Cho Ying in the student union. Not only are people good-looking, he also holds the position of student council president. The male protagonist is very happy with Cho Ying's arrival, but as soon as his brother Xiaosang appeared, the dignified student council president immediately blushed shyly. Maybe it's out of a woman's intuition. Yu Shenkue was full of hostility towards Cho Ying's arrival. Inexplicable jealousy made the conversation of several people break up unhappily. And what the male protagonist didn't expect was that, after the work is over, Cho Ying suddenly stopped him. Immediately, she shyly asked the male protagonist to go out on a date on Saturday. Happiness came too suddenly. The male protagonist was instantly overwhelmed. After returning home, the male protagonist is still fantasizing about winning the goddess sister tomorrow. On the 10th, Xiankue suddenly sent her a message. The other party actually asked her to go out on the weekend. At the same time, I was invited by two girls I liked. The male protagonist is very excited. Saturday, the male protagonist waited for Cho Ying at the agreed place early. I saw that the other party was dating the male protagonist, dressed up on purpose. Such a scene. The male protagonist has fantasized countless times in his dreams. Unexpectedly, today it really came true. The two went shopping and ate like a little couple. But the happy times are always short-lived. On the way back between the two, Cho Ying suddenly stopped the male protagonist, twisted and pinched to tell the male protagonist a secret. Immediately, she blushed and let the male protagonist sit next to her. The male protagonist is sitting and listening to her. Really, the other person said that he had someone he liked. Hearing this, the male protagonist swallowed his saliva. The setting sun makes the atmosphere more ambiguous. Senior sister's shy expression and her approaching body undoubtedly no longer hinted that the other party was about to confess to her. "You're all suspects. Why am I talking to a big fart?" The male protagonist's CPU has not reacted. Cho Ying also said that he just had a crush on each other, but actual progress has been nil. Therefore, the senior sister wanted the male protagonist to help her match. Give up the adored senior sister. The male protagonist collapsed to the extreme. The male protagonist originally wanted to refuse this excessive request, but Akino couldn't refuse because of his charming eyes. See this. The male protagonist simply promised her. After all, even if senior sister doesn't have to do it, she also has a childhood sweetheart who has had a crush since she was a child. Next, the male protagonist went to the appointment to play with Aoi Hinata. Aoi Hinata looks at the male protagonist without much spirit. Dunlian gave him a bear hug. And the male protagonist is in a bad mood because of yesterday's Choyekue, engaged by Aoi Hinata. On the contrary, he was much more energetic. This friendship above the lover makes the male protagonist fully grasp. The two also played like a sympathetic couple for a day. But when the time of separation came, Aoi Hinata also stopped the male protagonist. He trembled and pinched the hem of his skirt. Also let the male protagonist sit next to her. Really, the same often with the same rhetoric. Yu Shenkue showed the male protagonist that he had someone he liked. The male protagonist has been waiting for this day for a long time. I didn't expect to be able to finally socialize with my childhood sweetheart today. The anxious heart can turn over and grab a new one. Hearing this, The male protagonist has the heart to die. What is even more unacceptable to him is that Yushinkue actually used his childhood sweetheart to let the male protagonist help him chase his brother. The successive blows made the male protagonist completely crazy. With a dead heart, he wanted to refuse. But looking at each other's expectant eyes, the male protagonist had to reluctantly agree. After returning home, the male protagonist finally broke out unbearably. Now it's not just a loving senior, or a bamboo horse with a crush. They all like their good brothers. So, don't you want to continue to be single? Suddenly, the male protagonist thought about it. Now the situation is that two women like one man. Other words, he still has a chance to pick up leaks. With this mentality, the male protagonist decided to help them first. Next, the male protagonist was greeted intimately by Yushinkue as usual. But this time, although the male protagonist is smiling on the surface, but I hate him in my heart. After all, the woman in front of him actually cheated on his feelings for so many years. The male protagonist was angry and remembered last night's plan. He told the other party that the senior sister of the student council also liked Xiaoseng, and Aoi Hinata was not surprised. It turned out that she had long detected that Qiu Yang had a good impression of Xiaoseng, and Aoi Hinata just wants the male protagonist to help herself. The male protagonist instantly scoffed. It immediately means that both sides will help. But she had already helped Hinata Aoi figure out the battle plan. The happy Aoi Hinata intimately threw herself into the arms of the male protagonist. And the male protagonist only felt that she was very disgusting. In order to make Aoi Hinata increase in the favorability of Xiaoseng, the male protagonist deliberately did not go to school with her. Then let Aoi Hinata join the chat naturally. The male protagonist originally wanted to create a two-person world for them, but the nervous Aoi Hinata messed everything up. Fortunately, the male protagonist concentrated on the excuse that the student union still has business. And this one from the student union made her even more angry. After all, it is very uncomfortable to be played with by such a charming senior sister. The male protagonist also told her that there was a love rival of Aoi Hinata. When the male protagonist said that he would help her get close to Xiaoseng, Qiu Yingjing directly held her hand to thank her. At this time, the male protagonist was so angry in his heart that he was going to die. But because Qiu Yang and Xiaoseng have not had much contact, even meeting was awkward. The male protagonist originally wanted the two to try to contact first. Whoever came to her bluntly said that he wanted to make friends with Xiaoseng. Looking at each other's confused eyes, Qiu Yang had to look at the male protagonist with tears in her eyes. After a flurry of sophistry by the male protagonist, they also became friends. The tired male protagonist originally planned to empty the library. I didn't expect this to come to an uninvited guest. Misai is a very rustic book commissioner. The male protagonist has little interest in her. I want to shut it out immediately. But the other party suddenly told her about helping senior sister and bamboo horse at the same time. The male protagonist suddenly panicked. It turns out that the girl who seems to be honest and rustic is actually a stalker. She pays attention to the male protagonist all the time. When the male protagonist just wanted to slip away, the Anadna Hemi clan really worked hard to jug snow. What frightened the male protagonist even more was, there were benches in the library. This bench of fate is like a curse. The tricolor well also made her sit down and talk. The girl also shows that she has someone she likes. At this time, the male protagonist really hopes that what she likes is Xiaoseng. She didn't want to be liked by this ugly-eyed woman. As the tricolor well approaches, the male protagonist trembled all over. Shiyu is willing to make the male protagonist collapse to the extreme. Without thinking, he rejected the other party's kindness. But the three-color well does not have to be with the male protagonist. He is very obsessed with the male protagonist, and he will not force the other party. Just ask him to come here and chat with him during his lunch break.